Now Mark 6 Golf GTI with the EA888 2-litre TSI engine. It's got a timing chain rattle from cold start. Could be the tensioner, could be the chain stretched. Before we start pulling this thing apart, we'll read some measured values and just check to see the phase position of the intake cam, and it gives us a better idea of what we're pulling apart and the stretch of the timing chain before we just merely look at it mechanically. We can look at it by our live data from our engine ECU, so we'll show you that next on VCDS. I'm going to check to see if we've got any signs of a stretched chain before we pull it apart. So no timing codes logged. We go 93. And phase position of bank 1 intake. So this value wants to be 5 or less. Some say 6 or less. I'd say this probably would be advisable to put a chain in it while the car is apart. You'll only get this reading once the engine is warmed up enough too, so sometimes you'll get it and straight after starting the car it'll be at 0 degrees. So this is the correction factor that the vehicle's having to take into account, and as you can see, minus means it is retarded. As usual, we've started by removing the charcoal canister over to one side, just 3 bolts holding that in, just the 310mm down here. And then the 10mm for the washer bottle reservoir neck, and the evap line to the charcoal canister. And we'll just start taking this reservoir off, jacking the engine and getting this engine mount and bracket off, and then we'll start pulling the top cover and inspecting the timing chain and the tensioner. Also we'll have to lower the lower timing cover to get to look at the tensioner. But yeah, we clearly have a issue inside here, so we need to delve further and actually confirm mechanically what's required. So the coolant reservoir is also now removed, and just out of the way I've got the bracket off of here, and the 2 bolts are loose for the engine mount, so we'll just start supporting it from underneath and take the 2 18s out and remove the engine mount, and then we'll be ready to take the engine mount bracket off the side of the engine and start stripping the timing covers off. So I've got the engine mount off now, and as you can see I've got a lot more room around to work. This plate will be coming off next. Bolts in here, and down the back here somewhere. So we'll take the hardest one off first, just so the engine mount is still supported. And then we'll get that off and we'll start pulling all these covers and the variator magnet off. So there you can see all the engine mount off this side is gone. And we can now get this top cover off. Right, go for it. Watch the timing chain. So keep turning. See it? So it's lifting out the sprocket. And then it's lifting out that one as well, so it's doing lifting out of the inlet. So as the tension gets pushed back, it's actually releasing tension on the chain. So we'll probably find that the mechanical lock inside the timing chain tensioner has probably failed, and that's why we've got a rattle on cold start. But when you rotate to a certain point where there's load or unloading of the chain, it's actually lifting out the sprocket. So it's ready. This is ready to jump when it does a cold start, basically.
Yeah.
This is ready to jump on a cold start. So we've either got a heavily stretched chain or we've got a tension problem mechanically. So just to show the timing marks lining up, there's that white dot at the top, lined with that arrow.
little bit hard to see, but you can see the groove at the front of the pulley and the triangle arrow at the back again. So measuring between the two timing marks here and here, as you can see my calipers are opened onto it. I've got 128mm between the two at TDC, 68mm between the exhaust camshaft and the centre. 62mm between the inlet cam mark and the centre point. On the back of the bearing ledge, we can see that the gauze is also blown out, so this would be highly recommended to replace. So we're going to start stripping this down, ready to fit a new timing chain to it, and guides, tensioner, etc. First step we'll do is start pulling this dipstick tube out, and we'll take, say, the belt off, and we pop this clip in this front of the turbo here to get the boost pipe off ready when we go underneath and start pulling the crank pulley, etc. So to get the dipstick tube out, we simply are just going to pull up on it and it will pop out, and as you can see it is just simply held in with an O-ring at the bottom because we've already bolted the two top bolts. We've taken the cam magnet out of the top section of the timing cover. So we're going to start by undoing this tensioner and just taking the belt off. As you can see, I've got a 17mm spanner, and I'm going to start turning it clockwise to release the tension on the belt. The next thing we're going to look at tackling is getting this boost hose ready to be disconnected when we go underneath the car. So we'll go in with our hook tool, or you can use a flat blade screwdriver if you can get one in there. And we're just trying to lift this clip and get these up out of the way like so. I like to take this opportunity now to access these bolts from the top and just whiz them out also. You can do them when you're all underneath, but they're at the top and they're right here accessible, so I'd like to do them just now and get them out of the way. So this next step, we're now in the wheel arch, and we're going to take the wheel arch liner front quarter section out. This is, as you can see, it's a Mark 6 Golf GTI. Not that that makes any difference, all the Volkswagen Audi groups are very much familiar. So we're going to just take our Torx 25 and just start whizzing out these bolts. And those bolts running down, some missing, no there isn't any missing there. And then there's two just under the front section. One here in the corner there. And one just here. Well, actually there is one missing here in that hole there. But yeah, we'll get those out and we'll drop this quarter section out. We're also going to have to remove this under tray. So the same thing, Torx 25s. Don't mix these bolts up with the bolts for the quarter wheel arch liner. They're not the same thread, and they will damage the clips or the threads in the clips that hold the screws in place. So just these, there's 4 along each side on this model. So there's the 2 panels removed. So we're now able to see our crank pulley, the centre bolt, and this boost pipe that we were talking about, which we need to remove. So those Torx 30s that we can see around each side of the boost pipe we'll need to undo. They're the mounting points to the front of the engine. And then we'll also need to just undo this worm drive clamp, and we can take this boost pipe out of the way. So as we can see, the boost pipe is out of the way. That is our turbo outlet pipe, and our intercooler belt is off as we showed above, and now we can access our crank pulley. Now those 4 holes in that square pattern there is where our bar is going to go onto, so we can counter hold the crank pulley. You can gun these bolts out, but it wouldn't be advisable as you risk timing slipping behind there. So yeah, counter hold and then undo with a brake bar. And then once that's off, we'll screw the bolts straight back in, just to hold the inner sprocket tight against the crankshaft. Otherwise, like I said, the timing can actually slip. I'm just draining the oil at the moment, as it's something that is worth noting. The reason this timing chain stretch is either due to incorrect engine oil that's being used. So these engines require VW 504/507 spec oils. That's what the manufacturer specifies. And the timing chains do seem to wear considerably if these oils or less quality oils are used. Also, they also need to be regular intervals. People were stretching the intervals out way too long. In Australia here it's 15,000 kilometres. We're recommending do it every 10,000 kilometres. Now that's the reason why you also get massive oil leaks on the likes of your Beamers and Volkswagens, etc., Audis, is because extended oil changes in a petrol engine in the combustion process with these direct injections, you'll get a mixed hydrocarbons, or any petrol in indirect or direct injection hydrocarbons from the petrol in the combustion process is mixing them with the engine oil. That's why the engine oil gets darkened, and over time that oil starts breaking down the rubber seals and silicon, etc., because of the hydrocarbons from the fuel. And also it just degrades the timing chains. The rollers wear, the pins wear, and the links wear, so they're not actually stretching, they're actually mechanically, and the metal is wearing. I've also got the new timing chain soaking in a bucket of the engine oil for this vehicle, just so that all the rollers and links, etc., are pre-lubricated, so on our first start there's no wear to the chain. And they do come out of the package with a little bit of oil on them, but this is just an extra measure that I like to do. So as you can see, to get some of these bolts, this turbo outlet pipe needs to be actually removed from the turbo. As you can see, I've started removing it. You just cannot get it past this boost solenoid plug on the back here. We can get this camera to focus. You can see the actual flange of the aluminium housing won't come past the plug. So at the moment, this is just held on with 3 5mm Allen keys in this application. So as you can see, there is my socket up there at the top, and I'm just undoing. There's 2 bolts each side of the solenoid, and then I can move the solenoid out of the way, and then remove the outlet for the turbocharger, because I want this O-ring to be replaced. As you can see, I've got that turbo outlet out of the way now. I had to loosen both the bolts for this solenoid up here. The reason I wanted to remove it completely is because this O-ring always leaks, and if we then disturb it, we're going to cause ourselves an engine oil leak from the boost tract. Just breather oil leaking out, it would be. So that's what we've done here. But the reason that we took it off or loosened it at all is because it actually overlaps these timing cover bolts. We'll now proceed to get the crank pulley off and the rest of these bolts, and then we'll have that lower timing cover off. So as you can see, the crank pulley is off, the bolt is back in. This is a necessary step that bolt goes back in, and we've got all the bolts out of the timing cover. So I normally start here and just start with a sharp paint scraper and just tap it in with a small hammer and just start chasing around, breaking that sealant seal. And you can go down from above if you prefer as well, just to break that seal. The idea is not to bend this cover. So as you can see, I've got the timing cover off the lower section of the engine now, and as mentioned earlier in the video, it is easier to break the sealant from above. You can get across this whole top section all the way around here and down to around where the tensioner is, and then underneath you can just do from that dowel pin down here up to the tensioner, and then once that's enough you can then start carefully levering it away and breaking the sealant further along. So just perseverance is key here. Yeah, and just a nice sharp thin paint scraper. So as we can see, it is the old style of timing chain tensioner. installed in the vehicle. We can tell this by this metal clasp that goes around the detent and the locking element of the tensioner itself. And obviously we will be updating this to the later version. We'll have a check as well, make sure that that detent at present is holding the chain, and if not, if we can push the chain all the way back. So as you can see, I can push it that amount and then it hits the detent. That is correct operation at present. So we'll start stripping it down by starting with this oil pump chain, and we'll remove this tensioner for the oil pump chain, which is right here. So in order to remove this oil pump chain tensioner, we need to get this spring, we need to pull it out from where it locates. So behind this piece of aluminium is where the leg of this spring locates. We just need to pull that back and take the tension off, let that out, and then we can undo this top T30 bolt. Once that's done, we can lift the chain off of the sprocket and just lay it down. Don't drop it into the sump. As you can see, I've got a pick inside that hole in the top of the detent. And what we're going to do now is we'll just start pushing the timing chain guide back with the bar. And as you can see, I can then compress the tensioner. And in that small hole on the bottom left, we'll put a pin in and hold the piston, like so. And now the piston in that tensioner is held completely locked in the detention position, so we can actually lift that off, and there's no tension on the chain itself, so we can then remove the tensioner now. As you can see now, we've got the timing chain completely removed, the engine at TDC. So we now need to set the timing, and as we can see, these grey links line up with our timing marks. So that grey link, sometimes they're gold, depends who you buy your chain from. Now this one, we've got to move. You can either use locking tools, or I use an 18mm spanner on the camshaft. There's a notch on the camshaft that you can put the open end on, and then I'll just basically rotate the chain, the camshaft backwards until it's those two teeth out. It's then back in alignment. And then if we look at the crankshaft, we have our mark. The ratchet wasn't in the way. We have our coloured link on that triangular arrow there. So we're ready to line it up on the top, and then we'll put the guides and tensioner in. So the last piece of the puzzle is to install our new updated timing chain tensioner, which we'll look into more closely when we've got it in the car. And there you can see the part number 06K109467IT. So here we can see the new timing chain installed, and our marks lining up with the coloured links. One mark there linked, one mark there with a link, and one mark there with a coloured link. New guides, new tensioner, updated tensioner, new upper guide, everything covered basically. We've checked that the tensioner, we've checked that the variator locks, and it does, so we've got no reason to require replacement of that. And yeah, we're all good to go basically. So this thing is timed up and ready for reassembly. So we've got all the covers back on, a new magnet for the variable valve timing. It's now the plastic variant. So yeah, just to fix that leak that was there, and we are ready to start putting all the ancillaries back on the side of the engine. As you can see, I've also got the belt on, crank pulley's all done up, dipstick tube is on. So realistically, it's just a case of getting the front onto the turbocharger and the engine mount. So that's the turbo outlet pipe back on, with a new seal, so it won't leak oil from the boost system, and we're ready to just slap the boost hose on, get this arch liner in, and we'll pick up once we're all back together. As you can see, the vehicle's now up and running and all back together, and running absolutely perfectly, and no rattles from cold start. Yeah, so the engine's been washed down. I've driven the vehicle 5 kilometers, And we'll now check the inlet camshaft phase position again, just to show before and after of the difference a new chain and tensioner and new guides etc. have made to the phase position, and just to fix this problem with this cold start rattle. So if we look at VCDS and just check our phase position, now we've got our new timing chain installed. One good start is that we don't have any engine codes. The engine has been driven. The engine's been driven approximately 5 kilometers. So it is up to temperature. I'm going to go 93.3, phase position of the intake cam. And we now have 2.71. We were at about 4.4 or 4.3 or something like that. So there was chain stretch there. But we also had the original style tensioner, which has now been updated, and all our timing chain guides have also been replaced. So we'll call this an effective repair and leave it at that basically.